What files that have now been declassified do you think more people should know about? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Ernest Hemingway. For almost 20 years, he owned homes in Key West, Florida and Cuba and would often travel between them. However, due to the rise of communism in Cuba, pressure was put on Hemingway to sell his home there, but he adamantly refused. Then, in 1954, he was returning from Cuba when his plane crashed. He suffered injuries that left him debilitated and in pain for the rest of his life. After being forced to leave Cuba for the last time due to the communistic revolution of 1959, he bought a house in Idaho where he would spend his last days. Then, in the 1960s, he began to suffer from depression. He became withdrawn from those around him and would take to his bed for days at a time. He refused to leave his home, claiming to his wife that he was being watched and followed by G-men. Out of concern, due to his apparent paranoia, his wife took him to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, where he was subjected to electroconvulsive therapy, ECT, at least 15 different times. Then, in 1961, his wife found standing in the kitchen with a shotgun and called his doctor. Hemingway was submitted to a local institution for further treatment, including more ECT. 2 days after returning home from the hospital, he shot himself in the head with his favorite shotgun. In his papers and notes he left behind, he blamed his weakening mental state, depression, and suicidal urges on being under constant surveillance from the FBI. He claimed he would see black cars wherever he went, that his phone had been tapped, that agents followed him everywhere, and that his mail was often redirected. Later, declassified papers from within the FBI confirmed that a file had been opened on Hemingway by the FBI as early as World War II, that J. Edgar Hoover himself had an agent following Hemingway around Havana, Cuba, that his phone had indeed been tapped by the FBI, and that they were in fact so privy to his movements that they knew when he arrived at the Mayo Clinic, even though he was checked in under his doctor's name and not his own. The loss of privacy, the constant surveillance by the government, no one believing his claims of being followed, receiving ECT for his seemingly paranoid claims, and knowing there was nothing he could do about it eventually led one of America's greatest authors to kill himself because he could apparently see no other way out. The FBI spent decades denying its involvement in his death until the declassified papers were released, and to date have never taken any sort of responsibility for the action of the agency against Ernest Hemingway. The Gunman Project. It's been semi-declassified now and is a fascinating examination of Cold War technical espionage. In a nutshell, the US discovered the Ruskies had developed a clever way of bugging their electric typewriters in their Moscow embassy and went about reverse engineering the technology. By the time the public knew about the SR-71, it was old technology. The aircraft was so fast that the standard operating procedure for missile evasion was to accelerate. None have ever been shot down. Whatever replaced it is better. From Wikipedia, Three Identical Strangers is a 2018 documentary film directed by Tim Wardle about the lives of Edward Gallant, David Kellman, and Robert Shafran, a set of identical triplet brothers adopted as infants by separate families. Combining archival footage, reenacted scenes, and present-day interviews, it recounts how the triplets discovered one another by chance in New York in 1980 at age 19, their public and private lives in the years that followed, and their eventual discovery that their adoption had been part of an undisclosed scientific nature versus nurture study of the development of genetically identical siblings raised in different socioeconomic circumstances. The triplets had been involved as children in a study by psychiatrist Peter B. Newbar and Viola W. Bernard under the auspices of the Jewish Board of Guardians, which involved periodic visits and evaluations of the boys, the full intent of which was never explained to the adoptive parents. Following the revelation that the boys were triplets, the parents sought more information from the Louise Wise Adoption Agency, who claimed that they had been separated the boys because of the difficulty of placing triplets in a single household. But upon further investigation, it was revealed that the infants had been intentionally separated and placed with families having different parenting styles and economic levels, one blue-collar, one middle-class, and one affluent, as an experiment on human subjects. Nice, play with kids. files pertaining to Operation Northwoods, which was a proposed false flag operation that would have been used as a pretext for war with Cuba. While the operation was never greenlit, it still serves as a reminder not to take official narratives at face value. I don't know that declassification was involved in exposing it, but regardless, the Tuskegee experiment, or officially the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male, was pretty horrific. The Panama Papers sequel, The Pandora Papers, I find it kind of interesting. It was the one time the Pakistan judicial system actually worked, and we charged our then Prime Minister, Nawaz Sharif, of corruption and disqualified him from leading government after Panama Papers exposed him. He is currently in self-imposed exile in the UK and refuses to return, LOL, shocker. The thing is, anyone who was smart enough or paranoid enough knew how to properly hide their money and wealth. Both reports, although massive, still only make up a portion of illegal or unethical tax-free wealth and money laundering around the world. Shocker. That Roswell wasn't a weather balloon. It was a device designed to monitor nuclear testing using microphones. It was being calibrated for possible deployment by listening to US tests in Nevada. It didn't go anywhere because seismic monitoring was just so much better. I wonder if people truly rely on data or sources given by the same structures that perform these events. Not everything will be declassified or documented, so people need to watch out, as things should always be questioned and not suppressed. Rule number 10 of this subreddit. The CIA files on their assistance to Indonesian President Suharto in 1965. For those who aren't across modern Asian history, elected President Sukarno faced a military coup by junior officers upset by the corruption of the generals. This coup was put down by General Suharto and was quickly blamed on the PKI, the Communist Party, who had a slight involvement. Then followed a violent suppression of the PKI, the largest communist party outside of the USSR and PRC. Sukarno's power rested on its own party, on support from the PKI, on support from the military, and on support from Islamic religious. The failed coup removed the support of the PKI and military. The resulting complex political instability was resolved with General Suharto becoming president. Sukarno was placed under house arrest and his health conditions prevented from being treated. He became too ill to engage in politics and died in 1970. Suharto's genocide of the PKI was one of the worst mass murders of the century. No one knows how many people died because no subsequent Indonesian government has dared to investigate. Estimates range from half to 1.2 million. Now to the CIA. The CIA was closely involved in the genocide, to the point of drawing up death lists and funding the death squads of the TNI army. Many people who were prominent in US government endorsed the killings, reasoning that a dead communist was a good communist. But when the communists make up the second largest political party and you seek to kill everyone who's had a connection with that party, then that's genocide. Basically the same as if a Republican government ordered the deaths of all Democrats. The effing aliens. The UFO that was filmed from a fighter jet that just stopped in midair during high-speed travel, started rotating in midair while static, then flew off. Absolute madness. The US Public Health Service lied about treating black men with syphilis for more than 40 years. More than 100 million Americans received a polio vaccine contaminated with a potentially cancer-causing virus. Part of the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which led to the US intervention in Vietnam, never happened. The government tested the effects of LSD on unwitting US and Canadian citizens. How cloud seeding was a conspiracy for years then turned out to be true. Everything Snowden exposed about how first world governments have had an obsession with spying on citizens for years. Not a popular one, but the curious case of the year of 1968. 4 different submarines went down under suspicious circumstances. The book Scorpion Down by Ed Offley details the suspicious stuff that happened to the USS Scorpion that year, and although the book is criticized, and I don't 100% buy into the idea that the Soviets sank USS Scorpion, it does make me think what actually happened.